Someone genuinely brilliant sits quietly in a mediocre financial position, honestly, year after year, without much real change happening. Advanced degree hanging on the wall. Genuinely sharp, complex thinking on display in nearly every single conversation they have. And yet, somehow, their actual bank account tells a considerably different, less impressive story entirely. This isn't actually rare at all, despite how strange it might genuinely sound at first. Intelligence and financial success aren't nearly as connected as most people would honestly assume beforehand. In fact, being genuinely smart can quietly create its own very specific traps, one's average, less complicated thinkers often manage to avoid entirely, almost by accident. These particular traps don't actually look like stupidity at all, which is precisely why they're so genuinely dangerous and hard to actually catch. They look like careful thinking. They look like reasonable, well-considered patience. They look like genuinely high standards, applied consistently and thoughtfully. But underneath that specific, intelligent-sounding surface, they quietly keep smart people stuck financially for years, sometimes for their entire adult life. Let's actually break down exactly why this happens, one specific reason at a time, clearly and directly. Reason number one is genuinely analysis paralysis, and it hits smart people considerably harder than almost anyone else out there, statistically speaking, across nearly every study on the subject. A genuinely intelligent mind can see every single possible angle on any given financial decision, honestly, every risk, every alternative, every reasonable objection worth actually considering carefully before committing to anything at all. That specific ability feels genuinely valuable in the moment, like careful, responsible thinking actually happening in real time, protecting against real mistakes. But it often means the actual decision never genuinely gets made at all, delayed indefinitely by yet another round of careful, reasonable-sounding consideration, again and again. Meanwhile, someone with considerably less analytical firepower simply starts investing, starts the small side business, starts genuinely somewhere, imperfectly but actually in motion. Years later, that specific person has real, tangible results to actually show for their efforts, however imperfect the original decision honestly was at the time. The smart person is often still analyzing, still weighing genuinely reasonable options, still waiting for the analysis to feel completely finished before actually acting on any of it at all. Reason number two is a genuinely quiet, dangerous overconfidence, a specific belief that intelligence automatically transfers directly into financial skill without any real, deliberate effort required at all. I'm genuinely smart, so I'll simply figure out money later, whenever I actually need to deal with it seriously, someday down the line. This particular assumption feels completely reasonable on the surface, honestly, especially to someone who's genuinely excelled easily at nearly everything else attempted throughout their entire life without much real struggle. But financial literacy is actually its own specific, separate skill entirely, built through genuine practice and real experience, not simply inherited automatically from raw general intelligence alone. So years genuinely pass this way, with real financial basics never actually getting learned properly at all, precisely because they never felt genuinely urgent or necessary in the moment. Compound interest stays a vague, half-remembered concept from a class taken years ago, rather than something actually understood and applied directly in real life. Basic budgeting stays something considered beneath someone's genuine intelligence level, rather than a simple, practical skill worth actually building deliberately over time. Smart enough to understand nearly everything else quickly and easily, yet somehow never quite getting around to genuinely understanding money itself properly. Reason number three is genuinely undervaluing the boring basics, honestly, treating simple, proven financial habits as somehow beneath a genuinely sophisticated, complex mind like theirs. Budgeting feels far too simple and unglamorous for someone this genuinely intelligent to actually bother with seriously. Basic, consistent saving feels considerably less interesting than chasing some complex, clever investment strategy instead, one that actually matches their real intellectual capability properly. So the genuinely boring, proven fundamentals get quietly skipped entirely, in favor of something more intellectually stimulating and considerably more complicated to actually execute correctly. The genuinely uncomfortable truth here is that boring, simple, and consistent almost always actually beats clever, complex, and inconsistent, over enough real-time passing. Compound growth doesn't actually care how genuinely intelligent the person applying it happens to be at all. It simply rewards steady, consistent, unglamorous discipline instead, applied patiently over years, regardless of how sophisticated or intellectually impressive the actual underlying strategy technically is on paper. Smart people often chase considerably more complexity than the actual situation genuinely requires, mistaking real intellectual stimulation for real, tangible financial progress. Reason number 4 is genuinely believing raw talent alone should naturally be rewarded properly, without any real need for actual self-promotion or genuine negotiation ever being required at all. My genuinely excellent work should simply speak entirely for itself, without me actually having to advocate directly for my own real value out loud to anyone. This particular belief feels genuinely principled, honestly, almost admirably humble in a certain specific light, worth respecting on its own terms. But the real world consistently rewards visible, clearly communicated value considerably more reliably than it rewards silent, unspoken excellence sitting quietly in the background, unnoticed by everyone around it. So genuinely talented people quietly underprice their own real work for years, honestly, never negotiate their actual salary properly, and never really market their genuine skills effectively to anyone who might actually pay well for them. Someone considerably less talented, but willing to actually advocate clearly and confidently for themselves, often earns significantly more money over time as a direct result. The actual skill gap between them might genuinely be small in reality. The income gap, though, often ends up being considerably large, purely because one person spoke up clearly and the other quietly assumed they shouldn't genuinely need to. Reason number 5 is genuinely perfectionism, waiting patiently for absolutely perfect conditions before actually starting anything real financially at all. I'll genuinely start investing once I've researched every single option thoroughly and completely, honestly. I'll actually launch that side business once the entire plan feels genuinely flawless and fully polished. Smart minds are genuinely excellent at spotting every single flaw in any given plan, honestly, every risk worth actually considering seriously, every reasonable way something specific could genuinely go wrong down the line. That particular skill, while genuinely useful in plenty of other contexts elsewhere, quietly becomes a real trap specifically here, in this particular financial context. Perfect conditions genuinely never actually arrive, honestly, not for anyone, no matter how intelligent or thorough they actually are about it. Meanwhile, years genuinely pass by, waiting patiently for a perfect starting point that was truthfully never actually going to arrive in the first place. Imperfect action, taken consistently and repeatedly over time, reliably beats perfect planning that genuinely never quite finishes and never actually leads to real action. Reason number 6 is genuinely the most dangerous one out of all 6, honestly, and it's specifically unique to genuinely intelligent people in a very particular, unusual way. Emotional decisions get dressed up convincingly as pure, careful logic, using genuinely sophisticated, intelligent-sounding language to actually justify them properly to anyone questioning it. A genuinely risky, poorly considered investment gets rationalized with confident, clever-sounding reasoning that sounds impressively thorough on the surface. An impulsive, emotionally driven purchase gets explained away with a considerably more sophisticated justification than most people would ever genuinely bother constructing carefully for themselves. Smart people are often genuinely better at lying persuasively to themselves than anyone else out there, precisely because they're considerably better at constructing convincing, intelligent-sounding arguments for nearly anything at all, including their own real mistakes. The actual emotion driving the decision stays exactly the same as anyone else's would genuinely be in that moment. Fear, excitement, real impatience, honest insecurity about money itself. But the actual reasoning wrapped carefully around it sounds considerably more sophisticated and reasonable, which makes it genuinely harder to actually catch and correct properly, even by the person themselves. None of these 6 specific reasons genuinely have anything at all to do with actual lacking intelligence, to be perfectly clear about that important point. Analysis paralysis comes directly from genuinely seeing too many real options clearly. Overconfidence comes from genuinely succeeding easily at nearly everything else attempted throughout life. Undervaluing the basics comes from genuinely craving real intellectual stimulation and complexity. Underpricing real talent comes from a genuinely principled, quiet humility about self-promotion. Perfectionism comes from genuinely spotting every single flaw clearly and honestly. Emotional reasoning dressed as logic comes from being genuinely skilled at constructing persuasive, intelligent-sounding arguments for almost anything at all. Every single one is actually a genuine strength, quietly turned inward against its own owner. So if you've genuinely recognized yourself somewhere clearly in these 6 specific reasons, understand this important point honestly and clearly. Your actual intelligence was truthfully never the real problem here at all, to begin with. It's simply been quietly pointed in the wrong specific direction, applied toward endless analysis instead of actual real action, toward intellectual complexity instead of genuinely proven simplicity. Redirect that exact same sharp, capable mind directly toward starting imperfectly, toward learning the genuinely boring basics deliberately, toward speaking up clearly for your own real value. The same intelligence that's quietly been keeping you broke can genuinely become the exact thing that finally, actually changes it, starting today.